Test 1, 2, test, test, test. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out, especially with our fun weather we are experiencing today. This is a really important topic. I do recognize some faces from being at some of our other presentations, so I do really appreciate you being a part of this and wanting to be as informed as possible, because this is a big decision for our community, for our students, this June 5th referendum. I would like to also welcome those joining us online. We do have the availability to ask questions online. We are responding in real time. If there's a question, our team in the back that maybe is not been asked here or been presented in the presentation, we'll publicly share that as well. So, and then when we're done, I think I'm going to answer a lot of questions, but likely not all. We will ask any additional questions if you could join us at the podium here, so we can make sure we have that and we can hear it online at home and everyone can hear here. We want to make sure you don't leave tonight without getting your questions answered. Before we get started, we do have fact sheets out on the table out in the lobby, and postcards if you want those as well. And they're available online as well if you need additional. So let's get started. So June 5th, and the first question I typically get after the board voted to move forward with this June 5th referendum on the heels of the March 20th referendum that, as you know, was not successful is, why are we going back out so soon? Why is that important? And the board really did weigh that at the following board meeting, and it was really twofold. The main reason was our school district cannot access additional revenue that's generated from a past referendum if it's passed after June 30th. So if we wanted to access the funds, which we do need for next school year, we needed to go before June 30th. So that's really the primary reason. But in addition, we did have a lot of voter turnout, 10,000, the largest turnout we have ever experienced at Indian River School District for a first-time referendum. And there was a lot going on during that time period. We know reassessment was hot and heavy. It still is. And to have that level of turnout, we were really inspired, and we wanted to continue the momentum of educating the public, educating our own staff and our parents, making sure everyone got the information. Because of those 10,000, we do recognize there's about 80,000 voters in the Indian River School District. So a large portion of the population did not vote. So again, that's the rationale for the June 5th. So I wanted just to start with that. So the two pieces of this referendum are increased operating costs, we'll talk in greater detail in just a few minutes, and a competitive salary package for our staff. It's important to note, we have not passed a current expense referendum since 2017. If you look back over the history of referendums within our district, typically they're every 5 years or so. Sometimes they stretch 6 years, sometimes they're 4 years. But to go a period of time of 8 years is substantial. This is one of the major driving forces, this first bullet. Our expenses continue to rise. You see that in the community, you recognize that. Since over the last just 3 years, revenues have increased on average about 7.4% annually and about 3.5%. Again, that's an average, but that 3.5% is largely generated by the growth within our community. We're all seeing that. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And before I forget, joining us here is our Director of Finance, Mrs. Tammy Smith, and you'll hear from her in just a few minutes. Again, I mentioned since 2017, the largest escalations are really these six. There's many expenses that we experience here in the school district, but these are really our driving factors. And I'm going to show you a more detailed graphic here in just a moment. It's important to note that budget deficits since fiscal year 2023 have ranged from 4.2 million to 7.3 million. And without the passage of the referendum, we know that there will be further shortfalls in FY26 and beyond. The the issue that we're dealing with deficit spending is a natural part of the process. And I'll show a graphic to that in just a moment. But the point there with that third bullet is that the issue doesn't go away unless we address it through a successful referendum. And that's why we're here this evening sharing with you. And that's why we are expressing the great need to come out and vote on June 5th. So as I alluded to, here are, and I'll pause here and let you kind of review this a second, but we thought it was important to show that comparison from 2017 and the increase in those expenditures when you look at 2024. Just allow me to touch on each one of these just a second, and I'm going to give Mrs. Smith the mic on a couple of these, but substitute cost. Substitute costs are a general cost that we see every year. However, the state has implemented some program, paid parental leave that requires a large leave period for employees, and we get support from the state with our teachers, but we have a lot of employees here within the school district, and if you are not a instructional teaching staff, we have to pick up that cost. They get the benefit of that leave, and we understand that, but we're picking that up. So that is a large portion of that increase. Homebound instructors, those are things for, we have nearly 11,000 students. It fluctuates from year to year depending on, the enrollment, but right around 10,800 to 11,000 the last few years. Homebound is needed for students that have medical needs is a big one. Just services that cannot be met within the school. So you can see 147% increase there. I'm going to ask Mrs. Smith to talk a little bit about charter and choice, but I will tell you a big piece of this is we don't offer a lot of school choice into our buildings because they're at capacity. We have a handful of buildings. This is one of the few. John M. Clayton is one of the few, but most of our buildings are above 85, 90, some are at 100, 110% capacity. So we can't bring in choice, but we still have choice going out to other schools for various reasons. But that is a big impact of this because we can work from that revenue that we receive from students choicing in. Mrs. Smith, can you?
Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. For charter choice payments, so the rule in Delaware is the local dollars follow the student. So we're funded by state, federal, and local funds, and the local comes from those tax collections that are on the property tax bills. But when we send students to another district, so our resident students that choose to go to Cape, or even students from another district like Cape or Laurel or Seaford who choice in here, the money flows with those students. So there's a net effect of all of that. But we are paying out more than we're bringing in at this point for those choice students, as Dr. Owens said, because of the capacity issues. We don't have the capacity to bring in additional students. And then also with charter schools, the local dollars also follow the student. So we have had in the past 5 years, a big escalation on that. Sussex Academy opened up all the way from kindergarten to 12. So we had a big jump there. And then two new charter schools have opened in Sussex County, Sussex Montessori in Seaford, and Brian Allen Stevenson School in Georgetown. So when those students go out, that money goes with them. And we have some kids at other charters in Kent County, but that's the vast majority of it. But those funds go with the students, and that's what has created that huge escalation.
So utility costs, those are self-explanatory. You can see a 30% increase since 2017. And again, we don't see that dipping, but we shall see. Transportation costs, you can see a big escalation there. A lot of that is regulated by the state, but we do have a fleet of our own buses that do allow us to have some cost savings. So we utilize them when we can. I think we're at 28 buses, 29 buses. We don't want to be in the bus business. We want to be in the education business. And, to have 28 buses on the road, we have to manage those buses, et cetera. Typically, we are working with contractual services for that. But as you can see, there's a major escalation there as well. Mental health services. So there was a law passed by the state a couple years ago to allow for mental health counselors within our schools. There's parameters around that, and those mental health counselors are certainly needed. However, there's a local element to that, and you can see the increase there, 1.8 million, and obviously the totals. So I'll start from the bottom and work my way up because we're talking about the cost escalation there. And I said that we feel like we run our district very efficiently and offer a great service, and we need additional revenue to, you're in a beautiful school here that's maintained very well. This is one of our older schools. I don't know if it is the oldest. I don't see Mrs. Webb here. I don't know if she knows exactly when the school was built, but it's been around a long time. But you can see it's maintained well, both on the outside and on the inside. It is safe. And all of our schools, we try to keep up and make sure we are providing an environment that's excellent for students, both the building projects and with our teaching staff and programs. And in a couple later slides, you'll see some of the programs we offer. We do hear sometimes just continue to cut expenses, but we don't want to continue to reduce our teaching staff. And that's where a lot of the funding goes to our teachers. But as we continue to cut, class sizes go up and we aren't able to maintain programs and services that we know our students need and deserve. I talked about this, but as this is part of the normal referendum cycle, district build local reserves and balances in the first few years and try to hang on and keep in that surplus range. But then you eventually spend down that reserve in subsequent years prior to our next referendum. And then finally, the competitive salary package. Our teachers now are very competitive when compared to our neighboring districts within the county, and we want to be able to continue that. We need to keep pace. There's a national teacher shortage at Indian River. We've been very lucky to be able to fill nearly 100% of our positions annually, and that's because we have a nice salary package, but we also create a nice environment for people to work, and so it's our hope that we can continue to retain our great teachers and recruit new ones when we need to. Here is that graphic I was sharing with you. So here's 2017, and you can see here's the revenue, which stays neutral through the past referendum in 2017, and we live in that surplus range for as long as we possibly can and continue to build that up and save. But eventually you start moving into deficit spending. I can tell you we were able to stretch this period of time out a little longer, probably a couple years, because of federal funding that we received after COVID and just good fiscal stewardship. And again, 2023, that deficit spending started, and through our finance committee and the good work of Mrs. Smith, we acknowledged deficit spending is occurring. We need to begin to look within the next year or two for a referendum. We continue to hang on, but the time is now when we really need to ask. Talked about that first bullet, and if you aren't aware, we have begun staff reductions to try to put us in a position moving into next year, regardless of the referendum, in as strong a place as we can be in order to continue to maintain operations. At district office, there was a 19% reduction within each of our schools. On average, about a 10% reduction. This is staff as a whole within our buildings that work with students. We looked at our extra pay for extra responsibilities pay scales. That's athletic and non-athletic positions. They were reduced. We have adjusted our hourly pay rates for homebound tutoring and other services. Those have been reduced down. We've reevaluated after-school transportation services. And at the bottom, you can see the impact. 77.25 positions governed by our teacher collective bargaining and 55 paraprofessionals. This speaks to that transportation process here. 28, we are utilizing our buses as much as we can. We've consolidated positions where we feel it's appropriate while also maintaining the level of service that we know our students need. Several years ago, we entered into an energy savings initiative with CyberLink Train, so we continue to operate under that system, which looks at all of our operating procedures, anything from light bulbs to fans to all of our HVAC systems, which are automated, and set those on certain limitations. So again, it's a good cost savings measure for us. And we've explored alternative technology through the state system, which allows us to get some rebates on our technology. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Mrs. Smith here a second. Before I do, we are pleased that we have been historically and are right now the lowest tax rate in the county. When you look at the tax rates in Woodbridge and Laurel, Seaford, and Cape, they are all higher than us a lot. Some are substantially higher, and we have continually been at the bottom with our tax rate. The passage of this referendum will pull us up more towards the middle, but again, much lower than many of our other districts.
Oh, thank you. Forgot that part. So when we went to referendum back for the March referendum, there are requirements in Delaware law for how far ahead of the referendum we have to do our advertising and have legal notices and those kind of things available. So when that happened back in mid-January, we did not have the new property assessed values from the county. Those were not available publicly until February 15th. So with that last referendum, we were using the 1974 values to calculate the rates, which led to a lot of confusion, understandably, because people had the old rates and their new assessed values. So with this referendum, we do have that data. The county, like I said, provided it February 15th. It's still a bit of a moving target because the appeals process was going through. First, it was the informal appeals. Now it's formal. The cutoff has happened for that. However, they're still going through the process. But all the while, we're also still having building. So people are getting building permits every day, and it's been changing. But we were able to use the values we had to calculate these rates. And I'll go through them briefly. These are the 4 tax rates that Indian River collects annually. Current expense is operating, what this referendum is for, that we've been talking about tonight. Debt service is born out of referendum when we have a major capital improvement referendum. So when we need to do building renovations or build a new building, we go to referendum and the taxpayers authorize us to borrow money. Those are 20-year bonds, and that debt service rate reflects the principal and interest payments on those bonds. Tuition is a rate, it's a little bit oddly named, but it is funding for special needs children and pre-K kids, and that is defined through the State Department of Education. There's approved tuition programs for those special needs children. So that rate is set annually to meet those needs. And then minor capital improvement funding is for repairs and maintenance around all of our buildings and grounds. So the state gives that to the districts every year through the bond bill process. They provide 60% of the funding. We have to provide 40% of the funding to be able to access the other share. So those rates, these are actually this year's tax rates calculated down to what the numbers will be going forward with the new assessed values. Now, there may be some slight changes to those going into next year with the new rates, so especially if the referendum passes. But this gives you a better picture to compare the rates that went out this past year with the new assessed values. So that makes the current expense rate $11.45, and then total across all of those. I said $11.45. I mean 11.45 cents and 15.76 cents overall. What we are looking at for this referendum, it's the same dollar amount that we asked for last time, so about $22.5 million. That's operating expenses of about $12.3 million, and the salary package of about $10.2. That rate for this referendum is 5.59 cents per $100 of assessed value. What that impact is to the average property owner is about $269 a month. a year, $22 a month, $5 a week, or 74 cents per day. Now, the average assessed value in our district now is $481,000 approximately. What I'm encouraging everyone to do, though, this is a calculation we typically do with the referendum so taxpayers can understand how that affects them, except reassessment adds an additional layer on this. So properties, because the assessed values were so old, we see properties changing at different values, at different rates. So some may have gone up 10% and some may have gone up 50%. We saw a sample property, I think it was about $461,000 at the new rates, and there were about 6 of them. And one was assessed at $15,000 previously, and one at $19,000, and one at $25,000, and one at $49,000. So all of those tax rates are going to change, or tax amounts are going to change differently for those taxpayers. Let me skip ahead for. So what I am encouraging everyone to do is take a look at our website. We have a referendum increase calculator on there. So the county provided a calculator a couple of months back that gives a range. So you put your new assessed value in and it gives you an estimated range, because on your property taxes, it includes the district that you live in, Sussex Tech as a countywide school, and Sussex County. We piggybacked off that, added the calculation for the estimated referendum increase, and then gave the total. On that site is also links to where you can find on the county's website your new assessed value if you don't have that letter that came from Tyler Technologies. And there's a link to look up your prior taxes that you paid in August or September of last year, and you can compare what this calculator shows to that. In the research we've done, we found that about 52% of properties are either going, if the referendum passes, will pay less than they paid last year in taxes or go up no more than $100. And again, that's because of that fluctuation of the reassessment and properties that previously, like some commercial properties or higher value properties, that were paying less than their fair share previously. So impact fees was a big topic in our last referendum. There was a lot of conversation about, hey, the county needs to be collecting impact fees for all this development. So there's 2 different things with that. There's a voluntary school assessment, which is a program through the state. It is not voluntary for developers, but it's the voluntary piece is that they can give a school district money, or they can give them a equivalent property that the school district approves. We ourselves as a district have lobbied the county council to pass something to help relieve that. Both Dr. Owens and the Sussex County Superintendents and myself and the Sussex County Finance Directors have had conversations and spoken at the Sussex County Council meetings. And our school board, both in August of 23 and March of 25, passed resolutions compelling the county council to take action. So breaking news, as of last Tuesday, I believe it was, the county council voted 4-1 to look at impact fees. They're working with their legislators to draft legislation to allow the county to be able to collect those. So we are moving forward on that process. The only thing I want to note here for everyone is those funds cannot be used for operating dollars. So while it should be in place and we can use that to help address overcrowding in our schools, it can only be used for construction projects. So renovations, building additions, new construction. There is a QR code and a website here for the Sussex County reassessment website. If you have questions, they have some videos and information on there. But to explain briefly as well reassessment, because there is a misconception that because the assessed values increase so much that the district has to be getting additional funding for that. And as you can see in the previous slide, we calculated those rates down. So previously, the rate was, oh, here it is, $3.23.4 overall, but that becomes $15.76 with the new assessed values. And that's because by law, when a reassessment happens, and of course this is new for everybody, right? Because this hasn't happened since 1974, the school districts cannot collect more funds in that year of reassessment than they did in the previous year. So our district has been growing about 3% every year, which means in a year of reassessment, we lose that growth. This year, we are estimated to collect about $46 million in current expense revenue. And I know that sounds like a lot, but our local funds, our local salary budget, including regular salaries and substitute costs, is about 42 million, I believe, off the top of my head. So it goes very quickly because we are so large. In a year of reassessment, for next year, we would still only be able to collect 46 million outside of the referendum process. There is a caveat in law that allows school boards to collect an additional 10% in that year of reassessment. It's meant to make up for delinquencies, the appeals process that's still happening, and to help address growth. Back in February, I believe it was, our school board voted to not take the 10% should the referendum pass, because we heard a lot of concerns from our taxpayers that, you know, we could vote yes for this referendum and then you could stick another 10% on top of us. And our school board wanted to alleviate those fears and say, no, that is not happening. So as I was saying, we calculated those rates down. Our previous assessed values were just under 2 billion. They went up to just over 40 billion with the reassessment. But again, as you can see, we convert those numbers. So the $3.23.4 gets dropped down to 15.76 cents. Any other information you may be interested in as far as tax assistance programs can be found on the county's website. There's programs for senior citizens, disabled veterans, low income, other disabled residents. One of the biggest ones that we see is the senior property tax credit. So if it applies to you or anyone you know, please get the word out. The law right now, and it's changed over the years, and there's legislation introduced almost every session to change some of it. But right now the law is if you're over 65, you've been domiciled in Delaware for at least 10 years, you can get a credit on your school taxes up to 50% up to $500. It is a simple form on the website. You fill out your name, address, tax parcel ID, provide a copy of your driver's license, mail it into the county, and they take care of it going forward. So please make sure that you are checking that out. If it applies to you, the great part of that about the program, and the disabled veterans one is very similar as well. The state funds that. So the districts don't lose that funding. The state backfills it to us, but it gives our residents a great tax benefit.
Thank you. Okay, we talked about what we want to be able to maintain within our district. To be fully transparent, we certainly needed to talk about what can happen if this does not pass. Obviously, deficit spending, as I said, that does not go away. That continues until it's addressed through the passage of a referendum. We will need to look at our academic programs, extracurricular activities, and athletics. Moving forward, if we continue to not be successful, those things are all elements of our school system that will need to be analyzed. Additional instructional positions, obviously, we've made reductions. We won't be able to fill additional positions moving forward. And certainly that impacts our student services. And I'm going to get into a little bit more of that in just a second. We've talked about that competitive salary package. It puts good teachers in front of our students. And we know students benefit from that exceptional master teacher, especially teachers in specialty areas. Obviously, an elementary teacher is teaching a lot of times all of those grade levels. But when you get into our middle and high schools, they are teaching specialized advanced placement classes, language classes, things that require a master teacher that we want to be able to draw into our school system. So I want to spend just a couple minutes on sharing some things that you may not be aware of that make our school system special. And not every school district has these programs, and we've been very lucky to be able to expand on programs that we feel benefit our students, benefit the community. So when they leave us, they are prepared to go out to the community to be nurses, doctors, move into the military, whatever they plan to do. But these programs here help to make students more well-rounded. And I can tell you, as I go through our schools on a regular basis, and when I talk to kids, these are the things that they're telling me about. They want to get good grades and they want to be well educated, but they're really excited to stay after school for robotics and to be part of the band that's going to march in the parade for, Christmas. Drama and theater is big in our school system, and we put on some amazing plays if you haven't seen those. Girls on the Run and Let Me Run are opportunities for a lot of our students to get to know one another and interact. Mock trial has been very successful. We consistently rank among the top in the state and really one of the tops with public schools competing with Newark Charter and Wilmington Charter, those types of schools. I'll go back to the top for just a second. 24 advanced placement classes. Students are doing exceptionally well in those courses, and we continue to monitor what courses do students need to be able to be challenged, to be able to leave us and go into college or the workforce prepared. 24 career and tech education pathways. So those are things. The most recent one is culinary at Indian River High School, and it is quickly becoming one of the most popular. But that was one we looked at our students, we looked at our community, and we applied for that, and luckily we received it. So again, that is moving. We have JROTC. We have health occupations for nurses and doctors. We have structures for buildings. We have technology, business professionals, business courses is a very large pathway. I could go on and on, but these are all pathways that students are required to take a pathway, but often they take many more, including ag, which is a big one as well, and that prepares them for post-graduation. Dual enrollment courses, so these are offered through partnerships with our local higher education institutions. Many students are able to enroll in these classes and receive some credits moving into college. Spanish immersion programs at many of our elementary schools and into both of our high schools and middle schools at this time. It's been very successful and very popular. An international baccalaureate program at Sussex Central High School. I attended an awards assembly a week ago, and several students are graduating with an IB diploma or are receiving credits through the courses, international baccalaureate courses they have taken. That puts them in a position to get into just about any college they want to. And when we had some previous slides, I listed them, and I felt it was a little obnoxious, but understand our students are getting into any college that they put their mind to, and these courses are helping them to be educated for that. Excel programs within our elementary schools, athletic programs. Just take a look at any Coastal Point or News Journal, or check out the news any day of the week, and you're going to see our student athletes being very successful on the mats, in the courts, on the football field, soccer field, you name it, 45 high school sports. I probably should know the number of students that are participating at our middle and high schools in clubs or athletics, but it is a lot. If you ride by this building, Indian River High School, any of our buildings in any time of the year, spring is a big one, they are packed with students staying after school, and that motivates them to get up each morning, come to school, be excited about school, and to be part of a social element that some school districts don't offer all of this. So I say all that because it speaks to our school system as a whole, and what gets me excited about what we're offering. I don't want to look at any of this to have to eliminate or reduce. I want to be able to expand on this in the future because it benefits our students, it benefits our community. I believe that our school system is what helps to make our individual communities thrive, whether it's here in Ocean View, Bethany area, whether you're in Millsboro, whether you're all the way up in Georgetown. People look at our school system and want to come if it's successful and if it's offering the things that people want. Our doctors will come and live here. You see the healthcare systems expanding in our areas across all of our communities. We want the doctors to live here among us. We want to go to the doctor and have good doctors. We want to have professionals. We want good, solid individuals living here. And we can only do that to continue if we continue to have our school system thrive. Both of our high schools recently recognized their seniors, unbelievable events, and you can see millions of dollars offered to our class of 24. 14.48, 22.6 million in college scholarships to Indian River and Sussex Central students. 923 college acceptances. Ivy League schools, I talked about that. We have students going to Del Tech, University of Delaware, Del State, and as far away as Argentina. Several acceptances to our HBCUs. You can see the percentages there. Indian River High School, 76% 2 or 4-year colleges, and 60% at Sussex Central. 12 are going into the workforce, 11 to the trade, and 4 to the military. I talked about this, and I really do believe it. When you go out to eat, our students are waiting on you. When you go to the walk-in here on 17, our students, our recent graduates, are seeing you and helping you. You name it, they're in our banks. These students, many of our students do come back to this community. This is a wonderful place to live. If you're someone that's moved here recently, I think you would attest to that. And we want to keep it that way. And it is our responsibility to provide a good service to our students and ultimately you, because they're coming back into our communities and we want to have very successful schools. Okay, these are our polling places. We have highlighted 2 of them. Selbyville Middle School is no longer a polling place because it wasn't as accessible as it needed to be. Parking is tough there, as well as Long Neck Elementary. So it's now at the Methodist Church in Long Neck. And Selbyville, if you are in Selbyville and want to vote, you need to go to the fire hall now. You can vote at any of these places. Obviously, you probably live down in this area, so you have several options. But if you work up in Georgetown and you want to vote there, those are your options as well. Again, June 5th, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Here's your voter eligibility. District residents who are U.S. citizens at least 18 years of age are eligible to vote. Voter registration is not required, but residents must provide proof of identification or residency. Again, I talked about those polling places. Absentee ballots are still available for a little while. So if you will not be here, family, friends, please make sure if this is their primary residence and they're not going to be here, that they take advantage of that. And the Department of Elections Office has a lot of information on their website to assist you with that as well. This is what the ballot will look like. The language here is not necessarily Indian River School District. We have to submit information to Department of Elections, and they determine the legal language that must be on the ballot. But this is what it will look like. And I just want to share, we are frequently updating our IRSD website with referendum information. I think it's pretty easy to find. There's a banner at the top. You click on it. Lots of fact sheets around the various areas that we feel are the most frequently asked areas, like staffing, like instructional services, reassessment. So if you haven't, they are on our front table there. Certainly pick them up. If you need more, they are on our website, as well as this presentation and some videos that we are creating between now and June 5th. And I can't go back. Dan, I don't know if you could help me so I could get this back. It's not wanting to go back, but just so we can have that presented. So that's the information we wanted to share with you. Again, before we get to questions, thank you for being here this evening. I know everyone is busy, and it's nice to see a good crowd here tonight that's interested in our district, being informed about June 5th, and we don't want you to leave without having questions asked. So again, the fact sheets give you a lot of information, but if you have a question you want to ask directly, I know we're monitoring online as well. Please approach the podium here so we can all hear, and we get it online, and then we're happy to answer either Mrs. Smith or myself. Good evening.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for your presentation and being here also. So I have a question. It might be just my interpretation of what you were saying. You showed a decrease for cost-saving purposes of some teachers, yet you say you're at 100%. So were those extra teachers or?
No, they were hired in what we are able to hire. And we utilize several funding sources. We have grants and we have state units and local units. So we're hired at where we can hire, and we can't exceed that. Those reductions were coming off of what we were eligible to hire, because there's a state portion that we must pay. The state pays a portion, we pay a portion, and that's a large impact. I don't know if there's anything else you want.
Those reductions are for next year, or for next school year. So we were at about 100% for our instructional capacity this year, but those cuts will affect next year.
The other thing that was a little confusing for me was understanding the charter school.
Yes.
Okay. So it seems like you have an attrition, money going out, and no money coming in. However, you said that you're at full capacity for students. So if you have students leaving, and then you have space for students to come in, correct?
So capacity is defined as 85% or more. So once we reach that 85% threshold, school choice stops. So that is in code that we can set the rate at 85 or higher. So we could fluctuate that. But so there is some wiggle room, and we must have that for growth in our area. But we can't accept additional school choice in once we reach that 85% threshold. And that does, 85% in our schools does populate all of our classrooms.
Okay. And then finally, not that I want this to happen, but should the referendum not pass for the second time, does the school board get to go back and ask for 10%?
They can. So that decision would have to be made by July 1. So we have a board meeting in June. As we shared up here, the board has said, if we're successful, we're not going to tap into that. We feel like that's not right. If the public says passage of the referendum, we're not going to look at that. But they will, and it's not just a full 10%, but they certainly would exercise their ability to look at a portion of that even. I don't know where that vote would go, but yes, to answer your question.
So then also, with that said, I understand the board originally said that they would not tap into asking for 10% with the referendum. But if the referendum were to pass, could the board still ask for a portion of that 10%?
They voted and said they would not.
So that's the final thing.
Yes.
That stays final. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. Good evening.
Evening. Thank you very much, Dr. Owens. Appreciate your staff and your presentation tonight. My concern is with results. I look at the instructional sheet here, and from this, I would think our students are doing great. But everything I read says our students are doing worse than what not you, but we were presented in 2017. Yet we are spending near the top of every state in the nation, and our results are at the bottom of every state in the nation. And I just don't understand how we can keep spending more and getting poorer results. Can you help me understand that?
Yeah, and I appreciate you asking that. So after COVID, scores did decline, both in Indian River School District and across the state. So where we were seeing scores, and the scores I'm talking about right now are state test scores. So in our state,
We're talking math and reading, which are the main concerns I have.
Correct, state test scores. So where our district and others were scoring 60, 70, depending on the year, passage rate drops down into the 30s or 40s. What I can tell you, and that is concerning to us as well, we want to see as many students successful on tests as possible. We looked back to 2015. We went back 10 years. And I'll share elementary and I'll share middle school. On that state test, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, reading and math, our school district from those last 9 years was above the state average. Now, I know that's relative, but above the state average every year in both subject areas across the board. On average, some schools were much higher, some schools were lower, but on average, we were above that state average. Are we happy with the state average? Being above the state average? No, especially when it declines after COVID. But we feel, and we've looked at some preliminary data from our test scores this year, we're going to continue to move away from that average and move up. We want to be in the top tier of the state every year. So that's information I can offer, again, relative to the state average. At the middle school, the same story. Reading and math, 6th, 7th, 8th. Our middle schools, Georgetown Middle, Millsboro Middle, Selbyville Middle, Southern Delaware School of the Arts has a middle, collectively, consistently, over that period of time, 2015 until present, consistently, year after year, above the state average. Some of our schools well above that state average, with the exception of 1 year in reading, and I think we tied 1 year in math. So we continue to focus on that. Another element of that is SATs. If you aren't aware, Delaware requires SATs, school day SATs of every 11th grade student, whether you plan to go to college or not. So those scores compared to other states are relatively low. Indian River High School, right here in our backyard, consistently near the top of the state in students' passage of reading and math on that average within the SAT. Sussex Central, below. There's a much larger population there, double Indian River, and it's a very diverse population with various needs. But again, students scoring quite well. And when we analyze the students taking that SAT, who are also taking advanced classes, your AP, your IB, honors classes, more rigorous academic classes in preparation for post-secondary, their scores are remarkably higher than some of the other students. So I just offer that to give you some information. We also have looked at our elementary curriculum. We adopted a new elementary curriculum 2 years ago, seeing some amazing results. We shared some of that on there. We are hopeful that that curriculum continues to propel our students in a positive direction. So not necessarily where we want them to be, but certainly moving in a good direction. And I think, again, we will continue to outpace our surrounding neighboring districts over the next few years.
I'd like to add, when we talk about average spending per student, I think what we need to focus on, and I don't have the data with me, is looking at the region here in the mid-Atlantic states, especially here in Delaware. Vast majority of our district borders Maryland. So it's easy to hop, from Maryland to Delaware, vice versa, depending on the salaries. But when we look at national averages, I am sure that there are salaries in other states where cost of living is much lower. So it's going to cost less to educate a student. And another prime example of that is the paid parental leave that Dr. Owens talked about earlier. When that happens, if we have a couple who has a baby in this district, both parents get the paid leave for 12 weeks, and we are getting substitutes for both of those teachers. That is a Delaware program. I'm sure other states have it, but for example, I know for a fact that Maryland does not. So of course, there's going to be areas of spending where we are spending more because of the rules or the policies or the programs that we have in place that other states don't. But I also don't know what other programs other states have that we don't have. So I think looking at it more regionally than nationally would probably show a better picture of what the spending looks like.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say you are in a blue ribbon school that was recently named, and Mrs. Webb, principal of this blue ribbon school, is here. We appreciate her leadership there. Not to take away from Lord Baltimore and their accomplishment of blue ribbon, which is a national honor that is very, very difficult. We've received several blue ribbons at many of our schools, including Selbyville Middle School. Very difficult to get a blue ribbon at a middle school. So again, very pleased with that as well. Sir.
Hi there. Thank you for everything you do. I don't know if this was already brought up. Can you tell me what your enrollment is total? And how has that trended, we'll say, since the last time you asked for an increase?
Right now, we're around 10,800, and it has stayed around that. So it'll fluctuate. When you're talking that many students, it can fluctuate 100 easily from year to year. And we're projecting right now to stay at that for the next few years, maybe. since 2013, 2014, we had a steady, about a 2% increase. We were up at most, I think, 10,009 and change. So very close to that 11,000 mark. When COVID hit, we dropped about 500 students, and then we slowly came back up and we've leveled off.
So you've had this fairly stable number over these past years. And as I drive around, as I go around the county here, we've got housing development after housing development going up, new homes coming in. And I got to tell you, I don't see any kids getting on school buses from most of these neighborhoods. So I'm assuming, and tell me if I'm wrong, that the folks that are living in these neighborhoods are paying school taxes, but not putting kids in the schools. So how has the income been affected? How much money have you gotten in because of the increase of all these housing developments going up where you're not really getting any more students?
So before I pass it over to Mrs. Smith, she'll be able to answer that better than I. They are still here. So there are students there in certain neighborhoods, obviously, and I know what you're talking about. But the building is still occurring from our northernmost area, Georgetown. There's developments there too. Some is more affordable housing. All the way down here, we're seeing the building continue, which may not be for families that may have students. So it's continuing to happen. The buildings, so we don't see the students going anywhere is the point I want to make. I don't know if we'll continue to rise at a 2% rate, but I'll let you answer your specific question.
So the revenue we generate from that current expense referendum is based on those assessed property values that the county has. In the past 5 years, and probably longer than that, we've been averaging about 3% growth every year, which is about $1.2 million, $1.3 million, which again sounds like a lot of money, and it is, except for a district this large, it hasn't been able to keep pace. And aligned with that enrollment, while the number of students, I think from 2017 was about 250, maybe 300 or so growth, there's been changes on the state level that have increased our units, which is the teachers that in the classrooms and the other staff. The state sets those ratios. That's part of our September 30th unit count, where we count all the students and they're classified by their needs. So regular education or special education, basic, intense, complex. There's different criteria to meet. The state has also changed some of those ratios, the kindergarten to third grade basic ratios, the pre-K ratios in recent years that has made our units go up. So even in that time since 2017, while it's only 200 to 300 students, that increased 110 units. Also because our population changes, there's students who are classified as special education. Our special education populations have increased over that time. And in addition, starting in 2023, the state passed legislation to add mental health services units to our elementary, middle, and high school. So psychiatrists, mental health counselors, additional counselors, which has resulted in another 52 units. So while it may not be a huge increase in students, their classifications are changing, and it provides for additional staffing with some of the ratios we have to meet.
Now, are you saying then from these state mandates that these are unfunded mandates? Are you not getting any more money from the state when they order these particular things like the mental health?
Correct. So there's certainly unfunded mandates that come through. Like we talked about the paid parental leave and those substitutes. The state will only pay us for classroom substitutes for classroom teachers. So if it's a physical therapist or an occupational therapist or any of those other positions that we need, they won't fund it. And when they fund it at their minimum, not the rates that we have to pay to stay competitive with other districts and get substitutes in. But when I'm talking about units, the state does pay about 70% of that salary, but we have to pick up the 30% on the local side.
So you're getting money from the state now, because in Delaware we have relatively low, certainly low property taxes compared to a lot of, especially to the north of us. However, and we don't have a sales tax, but we do have a relatively high state income tax. And a very good reason for part of that, we have that large state income tax, is because they're giving money to you too as well.
Correct.
Beyond what you get from us and our property taxes. So what I'm trying to figure out is how we're getting minimally more students, even taking into consideration inflation, when we've got so much massive housing being built around here, and these people are not putting kids in the schools because even though you got all these houses, you're not seeing those numbers go up, and they're paying taxes.
Right.
And to me, the numbers, I'm just not understanding how we got to those numbers there. And also the fact that we do get money from the state with these mandates. And perhaps we should be talking to our state legislators and making sure when the state puts mandates out to you folks,
Correct.
they need to be funded. Then they can't, they want to make a rule, they need to pay for it.
Correct.
That's pretty much what I had to say. But I do thank you.
No, thank you.
Take care.
Dr. Owens, how are you, sir?
Councilman, how are you?
Pleasure. Real quick, technically speaking, going with the referendum on June 5th, as opposed to later on, tactically, what was the thought process? Because we know, by the way, Ocean View voted yes on the last referendum, and one other district did as well. But the overriding thought that people had was this a county assessment. So tactically, could you have deficits spent this year gone later when the elephant in the room tax assessment was answered and got a different result? I don't know what the result is going to be June 5th. I do know the Ocean View area voted yes on the last one.
And thank you for the question. I think, Councilman, and you came in a little late. We opened with that, but I think there's probably quite a few people that joined online as well that maybe didn't hear that. The board did weigh that, and we knew that reassessment was a big piece, a big question mark for folks. We felt like, and the board analyzed this when we considered that at the next board meeting, we felt like there was momentum in helping to educate folks through the calculator in large part, but basically also explaining the formula process. And we wanted to continue to capitalize on the momentum from that first referendum and continue that education process. That was a piece of it. But the big driving force in the board's decision, in my opinion, was we cannot access that revenue through that referendum, a past referendum, if we go out any later than June 30th. So going out on June 5th allows us, if we are successful, to access that much needed revenue next year and to propel us into the future. Again, they talked about that. The risk is people are still uncertain about the reassessment. Could we have waited to go out in maybe next November, December? Yes, but we would wait until the following tax cycle, the following school year, to access that revenue.
Yeah, yes, and I understand. Thank you. If the referendum would be shot down, that's going to happen anyways, because you can't come back for what, a year or two for another referendum?
We can come back within a 12-month, twice, two referendums within a 12-month period. So that clock started ticking March 20th on the first one,
Yes.
and it stops now, and we can pick back up. So I certainly would believe that the board would elect to go back out in March. So we would have to hang tight. If we are not successful, hang tight, continue to look for cost savings measures. But by March, we're going to have to start again looking for reductions across the board potentially to anticipate whether it would fail again.
I appreciate everything you do, the teachers, the educators, senior citizens like myself. Our kids are gone, but we do have to pay it forward. That's important. And I know this town of Ocean View hopefully will get a greater result, yes. And don't be scared. This is our children's education. Please pay it forward. Thank you.
Thank you for all you do for us too, Mr. Cobb. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you guys? Thanks for having me up here. Before I start this, I just wanted, my name is James Wheatley. I am the district math specialist over here, so I know a little bit about our math scores, a little bit about our ELA scores. And I've also seen the flyer that I think you're mentioning, sir, about the, our population's kind of stayed the same, but our expensive has, they've obviously risen. But before I start on that, I just want to say there's 19 of you that showed up tonight. And there's about 41 online the last time I checked. So that's about 60 people. And if you think about how many teachers we cut, unfortunately, we had to cut more teachers and more personnel than people that are showing up to the meeting tonight, if you put that into perspective. So even if your vote is a no currently in your mind, I appreciate the fact that you took the time to come out, to be invested, and to ask questions, because that's what we really need to see. And that's really important for our teachers to see as well, because as you know, morale is a little bit low in times like these for educators, and it's really good to see the public actually being really invested. So please continue to spread the word. And even if your vote is no, I really do appreciate that you are coming out here and you're getting involved. So to speak about the flyer, IRSD does serve as one of the fastest growing areas in the state. We talked about how there's tons of building going on, but our student population has only risen slightly, right? But we do have a lot of needs that have grown substantially, as we talked about in the presentation. So we talked about updated materials, school safety improvements, increased mental health support, staffing costs, mandates from the state, and comparing the raw per student spending figures from those past years, from in the flyer at this 2022 to 2025. Without that context, it ignores inflation, staffing needs, and support services. And even if our needs and support services stayed exactly the same, and just to make an analogy for, the people out online and everything, just like a family's grocery bill, utility costs, or health insurance premiums, they're all going up even if our habits stayed exactly the same, right? So our schools are facing these rising costs to maintain the same level of care and support that we're giving them. So even if our student population is the same, even if we didn't do, anything different, our costs are still rising, much like everyone's. And IRSD does spend wisely, not excessively. The claim from the flyer said that IRSD spends 23% more than the national average, which is true, but it's also slightly misleading if we're leaving some things out. So we have the special education, transportation, mental health supports, multilingual services, all of those services that many districts in the nation or states in the nation are not required to fund at the same levels. So I want to be very clear that this average per student spending includes non-negotiable costs required by Delaware law, costs that many districts and other states are not mandated to cover. And it's okay to be upset about that, but I don't think it's fair to point blame at the district for doing those things when it is a mandate. And the Mid-Atlantic region, just like Tammy was saying earlier, it is a different beast when it comes to school funding. So if we are comparing, I'm a math specialist. If we are comparing to the national average, yes, we're a little bit higher, but that's because there's a lot of low outlying states over there. If you take anywhere in the Mid-Atlantic region, New York spends over $30,000 per student, Jersey, $26,000 per student, Connecticut, $25,000 per student, Vermont, $26,000, Pennsylvania, $22,000. So IRSD spending around $21,000 per student isn't actually anything out of the ordinary for our area, especially considering that Delaware law is requiring us to do a lot of additional services. And finally, it is disappointing to see that, on the flyer, we talk about student proficiency, and that is something that I truly care about. And it's disappointing to see those numbers for sure. And while it's true that we have areas to improve it, it's important to look at all of the data on the same page where that data was taken from, right? We failed to neglect what the state average was, which we are 2% higher in ELA and we are 5% higher in math. It also failed to mention that our graduation rate is 90%. And it also failed to mention that our K-12 school career, either college and or career ready student percentage is at 80%. So these kids, even if you took the SAT or if you are not college bound, these are kids who completed academic or technical coursework, demonstrated mastery of that skill area by the end of 12th grade. So that could be SAT, industry recognized credentials, work-based learning programs, trades out there, okay? So remember, not everybody needs to go to college in order to be successful in life, and our metric is 80%, which we're really happy about. So I understand the concerns raised in that flyer, and I do believe that members of the community are seeking answers to legitimate questions. Like I said, I'm really glad that everybody showed up and is asking these things. But I really want everybody to take a moment and consider the full picture. My science teacher, her name was Mrs. Malley, she always said, relative to what? Because I would always say, it's huge. She said, relative to what? Or it's small, it's relative to what? Indian River's already one of the most fiscally responsible districts in the state, and we do more with less, and more of our money goes towards our kids. It's about giving students, safe schools, strong programs, support where they need to thrive. So if we want our schools to remain strong for the next generation, I hope that we can convince you to vote for the referendum. And I'd certainly be open to any questions, and I know that anybody on the staff would be too. So thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Stacy. I work as a nurse in the Indian River School District, but I actually would like to speak as a parent. My daughter is a fifth grader in this building right here. And in the 2019-2020 school year, she was a kindergartner, a time when she was learning to read, not reading to learn. And we identified somewhere around third grade, by the time she was finally back in the building full time, that she was having a learning disability. She had failing grades in third grade, and this was very difficult for us because we knew she was a bright and gifted kid, and why wasn't she exceeding in school? But we identified this because of the work of a team of individuals in this building who pieced together the fact that she was struggling. She was visiting the nurse's office more frequently because she was trying to avoid being in class. She was having some emotional struggles because she was having difficulty learning. And she's a great kid. And so when I finally got to sit down with her teacher for her conference at the beginning of the year, we talked together about what she might need. There were individuals in this school who gave her tests that helped to determine that she had a slight learning disability. And that combined with the gaps in instruction that she experienced in those first 2 to 3 years of school, she was falling behind. Between reading specialists, her special education teachers, her classroom teachers, her school nurse, her principal, her assistant principal, the behavioral interventionists, the school counselors, they all came together. And I am so proud to say that she brought her progress report home the other day, and she has a 95 in math and an 89 in reading. So she couldn't have gotten to that place if it weren't for a team of people all working together to make that possible for her. And I just would hate to see kids losing the opportunity to have a good education. And I think it speaks to exactly the testing that we're talking about. There's no way on her second grade testing that she came in at any proficiency that looked decent. She was struggling at that point in time. But I would bet that her fourth grade assessment was better than her second grade one. And I am confident that everyone moving forward from here will also continue to improve. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi. My name is Kelly Klein, and I am one of the board members for the school district. And I just thought I would take an opportunity to introduce myself. Sorry, this fly is really pesky. And let you know that this was the first school that I attended. And actually, I think it might even be in better shape now than what it looked like 35 years ago. It's amazing to be here. And whenever I walk into any school in the district, I'm always just so impressed with the opportunities that the students have in the district. Certainly, like I said, 35 years ago, we didn't have some of these opportunities that are offered now. And certainly we didn't have the supports that students have now. And I think it makes for a much better school community. And speaking of community, it has become very clear to me in the past year or so that I've been on the board that school is where kids first learn about community. This is where they engage in teamwork and they help one another and they learn about people who might be different from the people who they see all the time. And they engage and do something together while enriching themselves. And then as they continue to grow, then they come into the adult community and be part of the workforce, or maybe they go on to have further education. And this is all part of what I love about serving on the board and the Indian River School District. is that the community is very strong. I know that whenever I see people who I went to school with, it's exciting and we have a special bond, when we're doing business in the community and I see people who I know, it brings a special closeness. So I want that for all the kids here. I want them to be able to enter the workforce here and feel that same special feeling whenever they see one of their teachers or another parent. And really, I think that the district does the most to enrich our community. And I don't think there's any better investment that a community can make than in education. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Renee Jones, and I'll start by saying first, I'm the proud parent of a class of 2024 graduate from last year, Indian River High School. But more importantly for tonight, I am the Director of Secondary Education for the district. So, sir, I appreciate your question very much, and I just want to clarify something that I think is leading the public, is misinforming the public. A lot of what we're hearing about Delaware ranking so low, 45th is what everyone is hearing, is making the assumption and leading people to believe that Delaware ranks 45th based solely on academics. And I just want to clarify that that was actually an article published or a research study published in 2024 by the Department of Public Health. And what it actually discovered was that Delaware ranks 45th in 4 pillars, of which education is one. The other 3 pillars are family and community support, mental health, and attendance in school. All of those play a role in that ranking that Delaware received. And as others have already mentioned this evening, there are increasing number of unfunded state instructional mandates. I'm talking strictly instructional for my position, that take away from our instructional time with children with those core subjects that we are all concerned about. And those instructional mandates are also some of the highest in the nation in terms of being unfunded and having very strict guidelines for basically being in compliance with those mandates. So I wanted to give the whole picture that 45th ranking in the nation is not education. It is a global look at Delaware in comparison to how all of the states are performing in all 4 of those pillars. So I just felt I needed to clarify that for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi. I'm a kid, which probably won't change your mind. But there's programs that will make you just give you memories. And that's programs like Girls on the Run. I did Girls on the Run. If it weren't for that program, I wouldn't have memories outside of school and inside of school. It's always fun to have after-school programs because you get to see kids behind school, and that's really fun. And also band. I have memories in this cafeteria from playing my band instrument, which is really fun to me. And I think it's really important that kids have stuff like that. And I know that there's kids in my class that can't wait to go to Excel sometimes, just to get out of that classroom and have time to learn for themselves.
Thank you for sharing. That was very brave of you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Brian. I just wanted to double check something that your math guru put up there. Now, if I heard correctly, you have about 10,008 students and an average cost of 21,000 for each student. Is that about right? So the budget should be, if this number's correct, 226.8 million for your budget for the
So
Indian.
our FY25 budget is about 240 million
240
across state, federal, and local funds.
Okay. But I noticed one thing, there was a lot of expenditure stuff up there, but I saw no revenue graph with revenue coming across from 2017, showing what the difference in revenue was from then to now. And I didn't understand before, back in 2017, haven't seen a referendum since, that you have all these unfunded mandates coming down. But in 2017, I remember Mark Steele was here pushing for the referendum, and I kept bringing up impact fees, and he says, oh, well, we're trying to do something. Newcastle County had them, but we don't. I haven't seen the district really pushing impact fees on the county council. Now, with this new county council, I would hope, yes, that they do something about impact fees, but then if they do, I would guess that the debt service interest part to your would go down, if not go away.
Correct. So Newcastle County has had the voluntary school assessment program, which gives a flat amount per district based on the cost of building a building to homes in major subdivisions that are not low income or over 55 communities. They've had that for a long time. Kent County has had impact fees for a long time. So we have been pushing this for a while. I shared earlier, our school board has sent 2 resolutions to the county council since August 2023, compelling them. Dr. Owens and the superintendents in Sussex County, myself and the finance directors in Sussex County have been pushing this, speaking at the county council meetings, including representatives, I think, from both Cape Henlopen and our teachers unions. So they did vote last week to work with local legislators to draft legislation that would enable them to collect impact fees. Impact fees would impact everyone, but they intend on setting a minimum. So if you're adding a deck or you're putting on a fence, you wouldn't get that impact fee because obviously that's not affecting capacity issues in schools.
On residential permits, right?
I believe so, yes. They are going to work through all of that. They liked the Kent County language, so I think they're going to mirror that. But you are correct. We would be able to use those funds, not for operating, but it can help to lower our debt service if there's enough funds and we put in a request for a project. So for example, last August, we submitted to the state a proposal to add on to Indian River High School for our culinary arts classrooms and some other classrooms to alleviate overcrowding there. If there's enough money built up in that fund, we could pay for the local share and not go to the taxpayers, and it would not result in a tax increase. Or if there's not enough to cover the whole thing, it can cover a portion. So certainly that will help all the individual taxpayers as well. But we've got momentum as of last week, so we're excited about that.
On one of these graphs, it showed, it really showed you're pushing college prep. However, the push in trade was what percentage?
The percentage is students that are going into a trade school that are electing. So workforce is 12%, trade schools 11, and military 4. So we provide those academic elements, both the upper level and just a general level of academic. And we know students, there's a large portion of students that are not going to college. They want to go right into the workforce. So that's where we talked about the pathways that we offer. I can't remember how many we have, but just several pathways, including a building pathway, ROTC. There's many options for students. So just wanted to give you that.
Okay, all righty. Lastly, you have to understand, because I see this in different groups and communities. They see all this growth and they're wondering why you need a referendum with all this growth. Now, what's unspoken, and then many of the people I guess I've talked to, they don't understand the unfunded part of the mandates that you're getting from the state. But you have a learning curve to put out there to get over for many retirees that are here and watching all these developments going up and wondering, they're getting all this extra money in the property tax. Why do we need a referendum for this? And I'm not, that's just a statement and not a question.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Evening.
Good evening. My name is Matt Schifano. I'm actually a product of this school district. I went to school at LB, SMS in Indian River. My parents were both teachers for 30 plus years. My sister's a lifelong educator. I'm now in education. I was a teacher for 8 years, and now I'm working in the district office. And there is a lot to learn, right? I think this gentleman just said, right? There's so much to know about a district this size, $240 million operating budget. And it's great that people are asking a lot of questions. But it's hard. It's hard to understand all this stuff when numbers are flying at you from the left and from the right, and price per student and growth is here, but buildings up here and what's going on. So I'm trying to take, and this is more of a statement, I'm trying to take a look at this from a very top level view. I graduated in the 95-96 school year from Indian River High School. Since that graduation, we have passed 5 current expense referendums, 5 in 30 years. Okay? So that's a number I can understand. It seems like we're always getting hit with referendums, but there's different referendums, right? There's building referendums. This is a current expense referendum. This is the 6th one since I graduated high school in 30 years. This is the longest time frame since our last past current expense referendum. So like, these are numbers that I understand without having to go to meetings and finance committee meetings and all this stuff, because that's complicated. I also know that when this referendum passes, whether it's the one in June or the next, if it doesn't in June and it passes in 10 months from now, there'll be another one in 5 to 8 years. Why? Not because of mismanaged money, not because all the communities that are building and new people are coming in. It's just a simple fact that things are getting more expensive. Right? Things go up in cost. Unfunded state mandates, right? These things are happening constantly. It's not that so-and-so, you shouldn't have spent the money here, you should have spent it there. These are all complicated things that it's hard to understand. So I personally am going to try and just stay in my lane come June 5th, focus on what I know and understand from my job, and understand that we've got a lot of very smart people at the helm of this district that are doing their very best for our community and our district. And I'm going to vote yes for this referendum, and I'm going to vote yes for the next current expense referendum in 5 to 8 years, because that's just the way school districts in the state of Delaware work. It's not an Indian River School District thing. It's the state of Delaware. So that's really all I wanted to say. So thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm sure you're about ready to close. I don't even know what time it is. But before we did close, in comment to Matt and just in general, my name's Camilla Conlon. I live in Selbyville. I raised my 4 children in Cape and Logan. They were successful there. They were graduated from the high school and have their own children now, 2 of whom attend school here in Indian River, where I live now. And I just want to thank you, Dr. Owens, and the Board of Education for all that you've done for this. I served 3 terms on the Cape and Logan School District Board of Education, and I know how this money works firsthand. You've done a very nice job with this, and I know during the COVID years, things were so difficult, and I think you were compassionate and conscientious about not putting more concern on people when everything was so uncertain in those days, which is part of what brings us to an 8-year gap in, as Matt said, it's every 5 years, and it's like this everywhere. The financing, what's the word I want to say? The financing, the educational funding is very unique, and it's very complicated in Delaware. Referendum is an antiquated program, but we own it here. It's not done like this in any of the surrounding states, and that makes it difficult for people to understand. But it is the way it's done here, and the state provides 70, or in Cape, it was only 60% of the money, and the district has to provide the rest. And it comes from taxes. And I know where my sister lives in Maryland, the school, if the Board of Education says we need a new school, they pound the gavel and they raise the taxes and buy a new school. We don't do that here. We have to ask everyone for permission to raise your taxes, to build new schools, to have new programs. And to that young lady who spoke here that was in the Girls to Run program, it is clear in research for years and years and years, it is extracurriculars to keep our students in school. The academics are great, but you don't meet too many third grade kids or fifth grade, they're not first. They like the robotics, they like the sports. That is proven to be what keeps students in school. And you have all those programs, and I thank you for that, and I give you a lot of credit for that. And I think you were very diligent in your financial decisions for many years now. And now it's time for us to catch up. And let's do this for our students, for our teachers, and for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your service on the board. I know,
It's not an easy job.
you weren't paid highly for that. Any questions online that we may have missed? Okay, again, thank you all for being here this evening. We'll stick around if you have other questions, and please come out and vote on June 5th and share the information you received this evening.